Good evening. I'm here to speak about India's jobless growth paradox. India is the world's fourth largest economy. It is growing at nearly 7% a year, and yet millions of young Indians cannot find work. This is not a contradiction, it is a pattern that economists call jobless growth, and it may be the most important economic problem India faces today. India adds roughly 12 million new workers to its labor force every single year, but the economy generates only about 8 to 9% jobs annually, leaving a persistent shortfall of 3 to 4 million people with no formal work each year. The official unemployment rates look deceptively low, around 3 to 5%, but this figure hides a deeper reality. Millions of Indians are counted as employed because they do unpaid work in family farms or household enterprises, work without wages, security, or dignity. The real crisis is concentrated among the young. Youth employment stands at roughly 16% by World Bank estimates, and by some independent calculations as high as 40% when you account for those who have simply given up looking. Among educated youth, college graduates, the share of unemployed has nearly doubled over the past few decades. India has much celebrated demographic dividend. The historic window when a young working age population drives growth is set to close by 2040. The clock is ticking. The problem has deep roots. After independence in 1947, India pursued a capital-intensive, public sector-led development model, building steel mills and dams while neglecting the labor-intensive manufacturing that could absorb millions of workers. The 1991 liberalization opened the economy, but the growth flowed disproportionately into IT services and finance, high-skill, low-employment sectors. Manufacturing, the traditional engine of mass employment, and in, in every industrialized nation, never took off at scale. Today, manufacturing contributes only about 13% of India's GDP, compared to over 26% in China at a comparable stage of development. The result? Economic growth became increasingly detached from job creation. Why is it so hard to fix? Several structural barriers stand in the way. First, rigid labor laws. India's complex web of over 40 central labor laws historically made it costly for firms to hire and nearly impossible to let workers go. This discouraged large-scale formal employment. While the 2020 labor codes were consolidated in these laws, full implementation remains incomplete across states. Second is a skill mismatch. India's education system produces millions of graduates who lack industry-ready skills. Engineering graduates without coding ability, commerce graduates unfamiliar with GST, a system that prizes degrees over competence. Third, the dominance of informality. Over 80% of India's workforce is in the informal sector, without contracts, benefits, or stability. There is no single fix, but a three horizon strategy is emerging. In the near term, by 2027, a full rollout of the four labor codes across all states, reducing compliance costs for businesses and incentivizing formal hiring. In the medium term, 2027 to 2030, scaling labor intensive manufacturing in garments, electronics, footwear, and food processing. In the longer term, 2030 to 2040, closing the demographic dividend window with a formalized, skilled, and productive workforce, investing in vocational education at the secondary level, building urban infrastructure to absorb rural migrants, creating social protection for gig and informal workers. India stands at a crossroads. A 7% growth rate is impressive, but growth that does not create dignified, stable work for its young people is a growth that will eventually face a reckoning at the ballot box and on the streets. India has the talent, it has the demand. What it needs now is the political will to translate growth into jobs.